We're starting in a second. This is just a quick sound test. Okay, hi everybody, welcome to the stream. My name's Chris, if we're meeting for the first time. I do Excel VBA online. I have a YouTube channel called Tiger Spreadsheet Solutions, and I do live streaming. And this live stream is about the critical mistakes I see in Excel all the time. I've been doing this about 10 years, content creation, consultancy, teaching. And I find that when people have problems, and I've received hundreds of emails saying I'm having this problem in Excel. When people have problems, usually we can kind of categorize them into 3 or 4 different themes. It's like the same things come up again and again over time. These patterns have emerged. So in this stream, I'm going to tell you what these critical mistakes are, but more than that, I'm going to tell you how you can avoid these critical mistakes in your practice. But first, thanks everybody who's tuning in. Let's check out in the chat who is tuning in today. Now, can you let me know in the chat, can you see me and can you hear me? So who do we have in the chat? Welcome DC, welcome Bart, welcome Jackson, welcome Alexander just tuning in. Alexander says, where are we going? We're going into the stream, Alexander. And Jackson is tuning in from Tanzania. Fantastic to see you, Jackson, I think for the first time. And David is a new member, is just tuning in. David, I replied to your email, so thank you so much for tuning in today. So, as I said, let me know in the chat, can you see me? Can you hear me? The streamer health looks good to me. So let's get straight into the content here. So we're talking about 3 critical Excel mistakes here. So the first mistake that I see all the time is data fragmentation. Let me know in the chat. Are you guilty of this? I've been guilty of this in the past. Have you seen this? So what do we mean by data fragmentation? Well, there's a tendency when we're in Excel to pull data sets apart. I'm going to do a little quick demonstration here just to demonstrate what I'm talking about. So here we've got some data. This data is from our Excel dashboards for beginners series that you can find on the channel. And this is a typical data set. You know, we just got some financial data, logging some transactions here, personal data. This is random data, of course. Now there's a tendency for people to separate data out. So they might say, rather than having all the data on one sheet, let's take the January data and let's put it on a separate sheet. So they might just cut it and paste it onto a separate sheet. Or they might say, let's take all of the hobby spending and let's put that onto a separate sheet. And for the non-Excel person, it seems to make sense. You know, things are easy to organize when we break them up and kind of segment them off. Causes a big problem in Excel. Let me know in the chat, what problem does this cause in Excel? I see it all the time. In fact, today, or certainly this week, somebody's emailed me with this exact thing. And I'd say about 1/3 of my projects are generated by this thing in Excel, which is data fragmentation. Let's say hello to a few more people in the chat. Stephanos, welcome. Marcel, welcome. Good to see you. Push Badges here again. Welcome. I thought I saw Arthur in the chat earlier. Welcome, Arthur. Aye. And Shimshi is in the chat, so welcome. Let me know, guys, have you seen this data fragmentation? What problem does it cause for us in Excel? Well, Excel is a super powerful piece of software as long as we play by the rules. as long as we play by the rules. And we've just broken one of the critical rules, which is with fragmented data. When you think about Excel, what powerful data analysis techniques have we got? Well, you might think of pivot tables. You might think of data analysis formulae, things like dsum. You might think of some other data analysis technique. These data analysis techniques only really work if we have a single coherent data set. A single coherent data set. Just like what we've got here. I haven't separated the data out into months. I haven't separated that out into categories. I've just got a nice, clear data structure, everything in a single database, and no empty lines or empty rows here. This is what we're looking for. If we can get this basis, the world is your oyster in Excel. Really. We can use pivot tables on this. We can use data analysis formulae on this. I'm going to do a demonstration in a second. We can do filtering. We can do sorting. That only works if the data is not fragmented. Let me know in the chat, what's your favorite data analysis technique in Excel? DC says fragmented data is a good topic. So often you're working legacy sheets from the past and it's always a hot mess and unorganized. Indeed, David. And as I said, a big proportion of my projects come from the kind of situation where you got data fragmented across a file. So this is our number one critical mistake in Excel. Let me just show you a quick data analysis technique. Let me show you how powerful Excel is if you have the right data setup, if you don't have fragmented data. Now, people seem to be fairly familiar with pivot tables these days. My secret weapon when it comes to data analysis is, let me know in the chat if you can guess, my secret weapon is this formula called dsum. Super powerful, allows us to segment the data. So we've got some financial transaction data here. So what if we had a question, how much money did we spend in January? Or what's the total of the transactions in January? And then we might want to say, okay, how much did we spend on hobbies in January? That kind of data analysis question that you're probably getting at work all the time. We can answer that quickly with dsum if we have the right data structure. And I'm going to go ahead here, quick dsum demonstration. So with dsum, we have to select the whole database, including the column headers. That's a critical mistake you might make with dsum, including the column headers. Then comma, fields is the column number that we want to add up. So I want to add up the amount here, not the cumulative, the amount. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 columns across. So I'm just going to type in the number 4 there. And then the criteria. This is also difficult and people do get this wrong, including me. So for criteria, comma again, for criteria, we're going to select this table. You'll notice right at the beginning, I copied across the column headers, just drop them in there next to our data set here. So with this setup, we can hit enter now, and we've got the formula is returning minus 7,000 or something. Now, if we just select the amount column here, I can see at the bottom of Excel, we've got minus £7,077. What we can do now is just put some criteria in. For example, type in Jan here. Automatically, dsum has updated and is just adding up the January data. Let me just prove that to you with a little sum formula here. Just summing up the January data. Super powerful stuff, and we can see it's the same. So I've done a little test there. What if we were saying, okay, what were the transactions for savings in Jan? Then I can go to category and just type in savings here, and we can see the formula has updated. And I can again check that. I can see at the bottom of Excel we have minus 4512 there. So just an example of a really easy, super powerful data analysis technique, dsum. It's my secret weapon. Not so secret anymore. It only works if we don't have fragmented data. I get so many emails from people who are struggling with Excel. They're saying, I need VBA to solve this problem. I need something more sophisticated to solve this problem. No, you just need you need some discipline with the data at the beginning of the project. So you're not going to fragment it. You're going to keep it in one data set. That's going to unleash all of the data analysis power of Excel. So this is our first critical mistake in Excel, data fragmentation. Let me know what you think. David Voss says, yep, I can see and hear you. Thank you, David. Yep, Arthur says, Arthur, let me know, are you Art from FTS? I think you might be, but let me know. And Arthur is saying pivot table. Absolutely. Pivot table, again, super powerful. We're going to have problems with pivot tables if our data is fragmented. If we have one data set, clean, tidy, clear column headers and everything, we're going to be able to unleash the power of pivot tables too. Steve, welcome, Steve. Welcome from Berlin. How are you? DC said dsum example is very reminiscent of an advanced filter. Absolutely. Yeah, this what we've done there, we've just got a couple of putting in a couple of criteria. There must be 6 or 7 different ways we could do that in Excel. None of them work well if the data is fragmented, but to some extent it's a question of personal taste, style and the situation, which one you're going to use. And we could do it all in VBA, of course. So always be wary of the person who says you have to do it this way. What you want to do is add as many as possible to your tool set, appreciate their pros and cons, use them where they're the best approach for a particular situation. Okay, Alexander says, I mean, you could use filter for that. Yep, you could use filtering, but filtering takes, a lot of clicks. And with dsum, we just have, I'll just go back to the demo view here. With dsum, we're able to just type in very quickly, type in values here. You could have drop down menus here as well. That would speed up the data input even further. I've found on client projects, I've had a lot of success with dsum. And Art, it is Art from FTS. So Art, welcome. Fantastic to have you with us today. Very good. So let's move on to critical mistake number 2, which is an over-elaborate structure. And what kind of mindset should we be assuming when we're doing Excel projects? Well, first, we've got to acknowledge that we need to assume a mindset. We need to be kind of deliberate about what we're doing. We need to engage in some planning. And the thing about Excel is so many Excel projects happen in a kind of ad hoc way. Somebody starts a spreadsheet, somebody else continues a spreadsheet. Before we know, the spreadsheet's got 35 sheets. Nobody knows what's going on. We've got to try to step back from that. We've got to try to do more planning, particularly thinking about structure. A little bit of planning at the start, a little bit of collaboration with your colleagues at the start, not even opening Excel, just talking about structure. We'll look at a second at some visual techniques we can use. Is going to save you so much time later. I think 2 Mondays ago, I had a stream about 5 of my recent Excel projects. One of those Excel projects is in commodities trading. I developed a pricing model for a little commodities company near here. Guess how many sheets their file had? Their file had 120 sheets in. 120 sheets in. Now, admittedly, some of these sheets were doing the same job, so I was able to kind of group some of them together to understand what was going on. But it's a typical illustration of how an Excel file can get out of control quickly. Can you imagine if you had to work on a file with 120 sheets? So we're going to try to avoid over elaborate structure. To do that, we've got to plan. We've got to start thinking about planning. So I'm going to show you, introduce some concepts to you and show you one of my planning tools. So firstly, some concepts here. I'm going to actually zoom in Excel, something I never do. I hate zooming in Excel because then you have inconsistent zooming across sheets. That's not good for presentation. But first, let's start with some concepts. So we should have a particular role for each sheet in Excel. A particular role for each sheet. This is going to be our starting point. So if the only thing you take out of this stream is each sheet in a file should have a different role and you understand some of those potential roles, believe me, this has had an impact on your practice. So what are some of the possible roles? Well, we can think of the different things we're trying to do in Excel. What are we trying to do in Excel? Often we're doing data inputs. you know, a business, an organization wants to log some data. It might be student data in a school, for example. So we have a sheet to do data inputs. It's sensible to do that on one sheet and to separate it from the other sheets. Another possible sheet role is data storage. In this file, we have a typical example of data storage. We've got a data set here, and you know, there's no formulae in there. No data input is having on this sheet, so the user maybe won't interact with this sheet. We're just storing data here. A sheet to display analysis, a nice dashboard. I've already mentioned our Excel dashboards for beginners series. Go and check it out. It is really good. Doesn't get any views, but it's still really good. We might want a sheet to display analysis. Would we want the data set alongside the analysis? Probably not. Yeah, if you could see the data at the same time, you know, that's going to complicate things. It's going to clutter things. It's not going to give us this clean, neat and tidy look. So again, we need to be clear about the role of each sheet. So a dashboard for displaying analysis. What about storing calculations? If you have a model, then you're going to have a formula chain somewhere. So many times I say this formula points to this sheet, which points to this sheet, which starts some VBA, which goes to that sheet. That is a nightmare. Let's stop it. Let's stop it today. Let's start planning properly. Have a sheet to store calculations and then use short formulae and connect those formulae together, one column to another. That's going to allow your model to be understood. So these are some sheet roles. But if you want a simple idea to bind everything together, let's think about input, process, and output. Any Excel model, so an Excel model, an Excel file that has formulae in, is going to be a model. It's going to have input, process, output. Think about having one sheet or one area within a sheet for input, one sheet for doing the process, that's the formulae that are doing the calculations, and one sheet for the output. That's where we're displaying the data. Now you might call that a dashboard. So a simple concept to bind all this together is to think about input, process, and output. So let me know. Let me know in the chat. Do you even do planning in your spreadsheets? You know, I'd say 95% of people don't do any planning in their spreadsheets. Do you have particular roles for sheets? Have you even thought about this? A typical spreadsheet file, you know, in an organization, you'll have these roles mixed up on a single sheet, you know, and they won't be separated into nice areas on a sheet. They'll actually be mixed up. You know, here's an input cell, here's a formula, here's a chart. It's really confusing. You know, it's like having a house. It's like having a house and having, you know, maybe your shower and the TV in the same room. That would just be silly for a house, wouldn't it? And when we're thinking about spreadsheets, assuming the mindset of an architect is a good way to think about a spreadsheet. And we could take the analogy further. We could say, you know, each room in a house is a bit like a sheet in the file. You know, a room has a particular function. We do some things in a particular room that we don't do in other rooms. It's the same with a sheet. So if you try to assume the mindset of an architect as opposed to someone who's muddling through, you're going to have more luck and you're going to be able to avoid these over elaborate structures. Give me a second. I've got to switch off my heater here. Good. So is this resonating with you or not? Let me know in the chat. Let's catch up here. Steve says 120 sheets. Can you show us your face? Steve says, can you show us your facial expression when you realize that? Well, the 120 sheets thing, I was in front of the client when I was looking through the file. I can remember that. So it was kind of live development, live consultancy, and yeah, very interesting project. Now we've developed that file. It's now got 10 sheets and there's a clear role for each sheet. And it has been a successful project so far. Pushpatch says, Excel is getting super cool day by day. Do I need to have similar headers in criteria or can I play with them to manipulate? So Pushpatch, I think you're talking about the dsum formula here. So with dsum, with the dsum formula, where are we going? Let's go here. With the dsum formula, yes, you need to copy the headers across. So these headers, the spelling needs to be the same in the dsum area as it is on the database. These need to be precise. Otherwise, it won't work. If you're more interested in dsum, and why wouldn't you be? It's super powerful. Check out our series, Excel Data Analysis Formula for Beginners. Excel Data Analysis Formula for Beginners. We cover dsum. Somebody in the chat just mentioned SUMIFs as well. it's one of those series, that hasn't got a lot of views, but YouTube is an amazing platform. YouTube is not expert at serving up what people know in Excel. So I've got some good videos that don't have many views. It works the other way. I've got some videos that are not as good as they could be that have got loads of views, so I'm not complaining. Anyway, data analysis formally for beginners. Alex, yeah, thank you, Alexander, in the chat. You said I think the headers have to be the same. Okay, KN and David having a chat about South Africa. Fantastic stuff. DC says I could go for a TV in the shower. I was thinking about this the other day. I was thinking it'd be quite nice to have a radio in the shower. Maybe listen to a podcast, have a bit of music. This must be happening somewhere in the world, DC. If it's not, can we bring it to market? Let's think about that. Jasvin says yes to the TV in the shower. There's our first customer, DC. Jasvin, welcome. One of our members, of course. Jasvin is here. Steve says, what % of development time should be free creation of spreadsheet, and what % should be disciplined organization? You need both, right? Great question from Steve there. I think when I'm building a spreadsheet now, none of it really feels like free creation. I think I would compare it to building a house. I've found this architect analogy out of nowhere, but if you imagine somebody building a house, they might be laying the bricks on, but they're doing that in a deliberate way. They're doing that to a plan. So when I'm doing Excel development these days, it doesn't feel like I'm freestyling ever, because I've always got a plan. The structure is clear. This sheet should do that. This sheet should do that. As far as possible, I want the structure to be clear. I don't want it to emerge over time, although to some extent it does. So at this stage of my career, it feels deliberate, it feels planned, it feels steady and systematic. If you compare that to the beginning of my career, that wasn't the case. It was ad hoc. Emotionally, it was up and down. It was a roller coaster. It was massive breakthroughs and then throw the computer out the window. Okay. So I'm saying with better planning, you can have less stress, more consistent output in your career as well. Great question that from Steve. I'm not sure if I absolutely answered it, but great question. Pushpad says he's going to watch the data analysis formula for beginners series. Fantastic. And Bart says I'm planning more and more, but in the past not so much. After a time I didn't know where my first formula started. Thank you, Bart. Now Bart is planning more and more. So Bart, why are you planning more and more? Now, next to Bart's name, you can see a little blue symbol. That's because Bart is a member. If you like this stuff, I highly recommend to you Members Monday. Members Monday is a weekly appointment with me to push your data analysis skills forward using Excel in 2020. And as you can see in our live streams, we're not just talking about formulae. We're not just talking about VBA. We're talking about overall approaches. We're talking about managing projects. We're talking about increasing the impact of your Excel skills by understanding organizational strategy. How should projects fit into the bigger picture? Remember, it's better to do the right thing wrong than the wrong thing right. That's one of my favorite quotes in management science. Long-term viewers of the channel will know about that. You're going to love Members Monday if you like this content. So you can click join below this video and get yourself a membership. We're going straight into Members Monday after this stream. So you can start getting value straight away out of your membership. I would love to have you in Members Monday. Steve says, I think the architect comparison is right. Yep. If you think of yourself as an architect, I'm confident your Excel practice is going to improve. KN says, I've done the VB series. It's great. About to start a project at work using VB. And the user form one. Thank you, KN. Good stuff. And KN, I think you left a nice comment over the weekend. I replied to. Thank you for that. Great to have you here on the channel. Right. So moving on to our third critical mistake, a lack of data quality. Now, to some extent, this connects to our first critical mistake, which is about fragmenting data. We're doing things to data sets, which means that Excel can't work on them. This is the critical mistake we're making. In the first example, we were separating out data, so Excel doesn't know where to look. If we have a situation like this, going to go back to our spreadsheet here. Have you ever seen this kind of thing? So where you have inconsistent terminology here. So January and Jan. And then you might have food here. And then underneath, you've got food without an S. And then you might have savings, and then you might have monthly savings here. You know, whatever it might be. Let's say monthly savings here. Alt HOH 20. Something like that. Let's get the spelling right. Come on. There we go. This kind of thing where people want to express the same idea, but they're doing it in different ways. Yeah, they might be using different words, or they might be making a simple spelling error, a simple typo, or, if you're like me, some kind of spelling mistake. So here we've got a lack of consistency in language. This means we're going to have a problem with our data analysis. And a lot of time in Excel, people are trying to do data analysis. Our data analysis isn't going to work if we have a lack of consistency here, if we have spelling mistakes. Pivot tables are going to struggle. Our dsum formula is also going to struggle. So what are we going to do? Well, one option, not the best option, one option is we can say, okay, we're going to do some data cleansing. Yeah, we're going to take the data and do some data cleansing. And we know some VBA, right? And we know that VBA can help us with data cleansing. We've got a series called Excel VBA to cleanse data from about 3 years ago, where I go through my Excel VBA data cleansing routine. And then we've got some other options in Excel from things like Power Query to do data cleansing. So we've got some options there, but this is not about data cleansing, guys. This is not about data cleansing. Prevention is so much better than cure, certainly in this situation. If we're data cleansing, you might be doing that manually, even if you're doing it using VBA. It's a bit of a waste of time. It's an example of trying to cure this malady that we've been afflicted with. Rather than curing it, let's prevent it. Let's prevent it. How are we going to prevent it? How are we going to guarantee data quality? Do you know? Let me know in the chat. How are we going to guarantee data quality? We can do that with data validation. Data validation. Now, back to the spreadsheet here. Now, this is, as we know already, we've talked about the different roles of sheets in Excel, different functions, different things we're trying to do, and data input is one of those things. So you should be using data validation. What do I mean by data validation? Well, things like drop-down menus. Drop-down menus are going to limit the options that people can put into a cell. They're going to help people to avoid spelling errors. They're going to make the user feel supported when they're using the spreadsheet. So basic cell validation, not particularly sexy, but underused, super powerful and underused. If you can limit the inputs, you can avoid those spelling errors, avoid the errors in language that we've got here, and guarantee high data quality. Remember, if we can guarantee high data quality, and it's fairly simple to do that, don't fragment the data, make sure data is validated when it's input. Just two things there for you to bear in mind. If we have data quality, we can unleash Excel's super powerful data analysis techniques. I'm not even talking about VBA. That's the thing. VBA, if the data is high quality, we're not going to need VBA at all. VBA we kind of use to kind of plug gaps and use it to work around issues. If we have a well-planned spreadsheet that conforms to the principles we're talking about here, we can use pivot tables. It's not going to be stressful. We can use data analysis formulae like the dsum formula. It's not going to be stressful. This is the third thing for us to bear in mind here, a lack of data quality. Let me know in the chat what you think. DC says, too many workbooks. I hear you. With some skills and organization, it gets easier. I manage the combining of around 4,000 files each month into meaningful data for field locations. That's a great point. This works on different levels. So I'm going to go back to the structural slide here. We might be talking about too many sheets, but it works a level higher as well. It might be too many files. You know, you might have one file doing this, one file doing that. And then it works a level down as well. So on a single sheet, you might have different areas doing different things on a different sheet. So whether you're on the sheet level, the file level, or the multiple file level, we've got to be thinking about structuring. And one thing I didn't mention with structuring, let me go here. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to wind back a little bit here. Okay, let's go demo. See I'm right here. Yes. So you'll notice on the file, we spoke about different roles of sheets. In order to really get the right sheets doing the right things, we need a plan. Okay. Can you imagine the builder rocking up and just laying down bricks? Can you imagine that without showing you any plans? That would be crazy. So how can you plan for spreadsheets? Well, one thing we can do is create a structural diagram. And I've got an example here. In a structural diagram, a sheet is represented by a shape. Yeah, a sheet is represented by a shape, and we use arrows to show the connections between the sheets. Now, those sheets are usually connected by formulae, a formula pointing to a different sheet, or they might be connected by VBA, and formulae are easier. So make sure you're using formulae first. VBA might come in later. And this is how we can build it up. Okay, so we've got a data sheet here. What are the main things that we want to do on this sheet? Yeah, we've got a report sheet here. What are the main things that we want to do on this sheet? Yeah, so each sheet being represented by a shape. This gives you a medium for you to think about overall file design, because the worst thing you can do is be in Excel and be thinking about file design, creating a new sheet saying this sheet is the dashboard, this sheet is for the data. It's difficult to manipulate Excel in that way. You need a medium that's easier to manipulate. So use a visual medium. And I do this in PowerPoint, or you can even do it in Excel. And I'll show you here. Yeah, this is an example of a structural diagram, a real life one that I developed for a project here in the UK. So you can see we've got the different sheets here. Yeah, we've got some of the different sheets here. Let's go for a bit of view here, desktop view. Is that better? Yeah, this gives you the idea anyway. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to read the text, but you can see it's very clear. My proposal for this project is to have a 5-sheet structure. And then on each sheet, I've described the role of the sheet, and you've learned from this stream what some of the roles of sheets might be. So these are the different roles. And then these arrows connecting the sheets indicate how the data is going to flow. And usually that's going to be via formulae, although it might be in VBA. In this project, we were doing some data input and then putting it into a database. We used VBA to do that. So this is what you want to be working towards. And I find customers love this. They love talking about Excel if we don't have to open Excel. They love PowerPoint. They love doing this kind of representation, manipulating it, trying different setups. This is all really, really good stuff. And your customer, internal customer, external customer, whoever it might be, is going to love this kind of thing. So just had to skip back in the presentation there. So we've spoken about fragmented data. We've spoken about over-elaborate structure. And we've spoken about data quality issues. Now, remember, guys, straight after the stream, we're going into Members Monday. What does Members Monday get you? Gets you access to a weekly live stream. So it's weekly with me. I'm going to turn up. Are you going to turn up? Remember, it's a new year. It's a new year. Why not build in some habits now? It's weekly. That means consistency. That means improvement. In the live stream, you're going to get to interact with other people in the community. We've got some members in the chat now. Bart's in the chat. David's in the chat. He's a new member. You can suggest topics for the live stream. So as you can see on this channel, everything is contextual. It's contextual. So I don't teach things for the sake of teaching things, or you might say that this is a bit of a theoretical stream. That's true. But in Members Monday, we're looking at real life examples from the members, and I'm working on those files with the members. And so far, we've got excellent feedback on this. So if you're interested, and I would love to have you, you can click on join just below this video. You should see a join button. We're going to start Members Monday at 5 o'clock UK time. Looking forward to that. Okay, so we're going to get on to critical issue number 4. I put a bonus one in here, but before we do that, let's get into the chats. Anything big here? Okay, I don't think I'm going to be able to answer everything in the chat, but I'm just scrolling up here. Yeah, it's good to see people interacting with each other in the chat rather than just asking questions to me. I can see DC and a few other people having a chat there. That's good stuff. Good. Okay, great question here from David. Right. Is user forms not more practical than data validation? Let me know what you think in the chat. Looking at Excel, what's the easiest way for us to do let's go back to the spreadsheet here. What's the easiest way for us to do data input in Excel? Now, I feel like a bit of a hypocrite here because I have a series on YouTube called Excel User Forms for Beginners. But the truth is, the easiest way to do data input in Excel is to use the spreadsheet. When we're building a user form, it's almost like we're building a spreadsheet to sit on top of a spreadsheet. When we build a user form, we put boxes in for data input. All of that already exists in the file. So for me, user forms I use to layer additional functionality on top of existing functionality where that's necessary. It's much easier to do data validation. We go Alt-A-V-V on Windows. It's easier to do data validation on a cell than it is on a user form. It's perfectly possible to do data validation on a user form. We've got some settings and we can do VBA-based validation. But all of that is more complicated than just using good old cell validation. Often ignored, underused, but actually super useful. So I would actually say, if somebody's saying to me, I need to use a user form, I'm looking for a specific justification for having a user form, because user forms are complicated. They bring some issues with them. You're going to need some VBA coding. You have display issues with user forms. Sometimes they don't come out the right size on different screens. So my go-to way to do data input is always in the spreadsheet, using cell validation first. Yes, user forms are possible, but I want a specific justification for using a user form. So just some ideas for you there, David, and thank you for the question. Okay, just going through the chat here. What else have we got here? Okay. Yeah, Art says, never underestimate the user's ability to find a strange or weird way to break your code. Absolutely. Yeah, good point. We've got to assume the worst, always. But I would say to people, if it's possible for your spreadsheet to break, your spreadsheet will break. Yeah. So you've got to be thinking about how to make it robust. We had two great ideas here. I think Jasfin said provide some guidance materials with your spreadsheet. Yep. You know what I'm going to say. Always produce a video. Produce a video to go with the spreadsheet. You can get a screen recorder for free online. Obviously, I've got quite a sophisticated setup now, but you don't need all this technology to do a screen recording. Record a little video showing how to use your spreadsheet. Your client is going to love it. Internal client, external client, whoever it is, record a little video. People just seem to love it. When you do a video walk through, it means they can open up the file, look at your video, do the same things. Great way to build confidence in your implementation. So great shout. I think that was Jasmine. Somebody else said, yeah, locking down the spreadsheet. So using password protection and things like that. Yes, also possible. It's something I do. Not always necessary. It depends what level your user is at, because if you're putting password protection in, that can be quite complicated. For example, if you've got VBA code that's doing something in the file, you're going to have to remove the password in VBA. So it brings some complications with it. So again, I'm looking for a particular reason to do that, to actually put the password protection in. If it's necessary, then absolutely we can put that in there. Okay, let's get on to number 4. I did say 3 critical mistakes, but we've got a bonus. We've got a bonus here. And this bonus, I think, is particularly pertinent and relevant to our audience here, because our audience here, we have some Excel enthusiasts like me. Yeah, particularly we have people interested in VBA. We have people interested in user forms. We have people interested in pivot tables and the more advanced features. Don't get me wrong here. Don't get me wrong here. All of these things have their place, including Excel VBA. And you can see on the channel some of the things I've done with VBA, but we've got to avoid techniques-driven development. Avoid techniques-driven development. Now, for example, we just had the user form discussion. Now, if your attitude is, I'm going to use a user form, whatever, then I'd say that's a techniques-driven development, which is not the right way to do it in my view. The right way to do it in my view is to have a client-driven development, a needs-driven development. Yes, we've got all these nice tools, but we're only going to use those tools if it's the tool that gets the job done to create value for the client. which means we might not need user forms. We might not need VBA. We might not need pivot tables. We're only going to use the things we need to create value for the client. And I see this kind of thing all the time. Now, our YouTube channel is a bit of a special case because it's a learning environment. So you should absolutely be trying things out on the YouTube channel. But I often get people emailing me files, and they're classic examples of techniques-driven development. So people have been wanting to use the techniques, which, don't get me wrong, is great. You have to try out the techniques, as long as you draw a distinction between trying out the techniques yourself and your approach to real life projects. The only approach to have on real life projects, in my view, is to use what you need to get the job done to a standard that the client is very satisfied with, but then no more. What's the phrase? It's something like the minimum viable implementation is what we want to go for. User forms is a good example. If we put user forms in, there's a set of problems that comes with that. If we put VBA in, then it means the user's got to allow macros. And believe me, just getting the user to allow macros often creates problems. So we've got to appreciate there's always a downside to the techniques we're bringing in, although they are super powerful. There's no doubt about that. So try to avoid techniques-driven development. Try to obsess about client needs. We want to move towards client-driven development. Okay, so let me know. What do you think in the chat? So we've got 4 things. We've spoken about the need to avoid fragmented data. We've spoken about the need to avoid over-elaborate structure. Spoken about the need to make sure data quality is high using validation. And we've had our bonus critical mistake here, which is to avoid techniques-driven development. Just on this point, this is why projects such as the chess project, on the channel we have the Excel spreadsheet Skunkworks Build a Chess Computer series. This is why this kind of project is really useful, because it creates a playground for you to practice whatever you like. So make sure you've got your own Skunkworks project, doing something crazy in Excel or something you don't know is possible in Excel. That's going to give you the right place to practice all these different techniques. Okay, good. So Terry and Lee just coming into the chat. Welcome, guys. Terry, don't worry too much about being late, because you can, of course, rewatch this. It's going to go straight onto the YouTube channel. Let's see. So Bart is saying, a user form is nice and handy, but not always. Yeah, that's a good way to summarize it. A user form is nice and handy, but not necessary. For some not Excel fan, you can get the discussion, why not use Access? Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. You could broaden this discussion out and say, is Excel always the best way to do it? If you're looking to build a database, then Access might be the best way to do it. That's a relevant point in this discussion. DC says, I don't usually use user forms as a starting point, but I do use them frequently as advanced message boxes when problems pop up. Yes, DC. So this is an example of layering functionality on existing functionality. I think the general approach is to get the basic function going using formulae, and then the other things you can layer on top of that to deliver additional functionality. We shouldn't have a model that needs VBA to operate, because a model should operate through formulae. But we might want to do an optimization of the model, and we might use VBA or user forms to do that. Good, fantastic. Can't see any other questions in the chat. So make sure you consider Members Monday. So you can get into Members Monday by clicking join below this video. We've got a great group of learners in there, really motivated, great interaction with me. They're supporting each other. They're sending examples to me, things they want to learn on. We're going straight into Members Monday after this stream. How do you get into Members Monday? You click join below this stream, and you can get all the details there. And if you sign up quickly, you can access the live stream. That's going to happen at 5 o'clock. Okay, just looking at the chat. Any further questions to answer here? Alexander says, if you know both well Excel and Access, you have many tools to work with. Absolutely, Alexander. And, we could say add Word and PowerPoint to that as well. If you've got good command of all of these tools, you are very well set indeed. Okay, guys, thank you very much for watching. So this has been the 3 or 4 critical mistakes for you to avoid in Excel. If you're watching on replay, leave me a comment, and I will see you very soon. Take care. Hopefully see you in Members Monday.